You just don't care, no. I don't wanna play. Baby, I'm just fine. I don't need you anymore.
Content information and a link to the written version of this video, please check the description below. Spoilers. This entry contains spoilers for episode 2 of Marvel Studios' What If series, so if you haven't seen it yet, I recommend you do that before checking out this entry. There will also be minor spoilers for the films Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 and Black Panther. I do not own the rights to any of the characters or events mentioned. They are property of Marvel Studios and the Walt Disney Company. Welcome to the second entry in this series, where we discuss each episode of Season 1 of Marvel's first ever MCU canon animated series. This series focuses on what would happen if one thing within the MCU changed. These episodes are presented in 30-minute runtimes and are stuffed to the brim of juicy content to explore. In the second episode of What If, we follow what would happen if T'Challa was abducted by Yondu, instead of Peter Quill. This review is a couple weeks behind when the episode first aired. This is because I was on holiday the week that it aired, and busy preparing for it the week before, and just didn't have time to work on it. I toyed with the idea of jumping in with the third episode, but it didn't feel fair. That said, I hope you enjoy this review. If you would like to support me, consider donating to my Cash App or my GoFundMe to help my transition costs, which are links down below, as well as my email for general inquiries, commissions, everything as such. And also you can find the link to my Twitter, which is @UTU_with_JJ, where you'll find all the updates of everything going on in my channel. Disclaimer. I am not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company or Marvel Studios. All assets of these companies which I mention here are strictly for reviewing purposes. I do not claim to own any of this content, and I do encourage you all to check out the original media the content we are exploring was based on. Remembering Chadwick Boseman. Before we fully get into this entry, I think it's only fair that we remember the man that made this episode possible, and made it so heartfelt and enjoyable. Chadwick Boseman passed away just over a year ago at the time of making this entry. He was a light in the lives of all those he touched, an inspiration to all those who watched him do what he loved the most. He helped reshape how the black community is represented in the film industry, and just like in this episode of What If, he truly did make the world a better place. We should all keep Chadwick in our hearts and lead by his example. Chadwick, you were missed. Thank you for everything you did for us. Now let's all take a quiet moment to remember him before getting back into this entry. What births this new reality? Before we get into the main plot and what I thought of it, we need to start by seeing what changed. This new reality was born after Yondu placed the control of finding Peter Quill on his subordinates, who mistook the large amount of energy being emitted from Wakanda as the signature identifying the child of a Celestial. This resulted in them picking up T'Challa, who had only moments before left the protective shield of Wakanda in order to retrieve his spear and to explore the world outside. At first, Yondu was annoyed that they hadn't picked up Quill, but after seeing just how intelligent T'Challa was, he decided to take him under his wing. What if T'Challa became a Star-Lord. The plot. Fast forwarding around 20 years, we are introduced to an adult Star-Lord who is stealing the Power Stone in a similar way to how Peter Quill stole it in the Guardians of the Galaxy, minus the 80s music. T'Challa's Star-Lord is confronted by Korath, who is infatuated with him. The two have a very one-sided fight before Korath is knocked out and carried away by T'Challa. Yondu picks the pair up, and the Ravagers, which now includes a reformed Thanos, who gave up on his genocidal goal, are all met by a new, much happier Nebula, who proposes a heist to steal an artifact from the Collector, who is the new big bad instead of Thanos. The artifact is called the Embers of Genesis, which is able to terraform any ecosystem. T'Challa agrees to Nebula's proposal, and the Ravagers all head to nowhere. The Ravagers are intercepted by the Black Order, who now work for the Collector instead of Thanos, which gives Nebula and Yondu the chance to distract Tavan, the Collector, by offering him the orb, the Power Stone, so that T'Challa can sneak off and infiltrate the Collector's collection. On his way, T'Challa encounters Howard the Duck, voiced by Seth Green, who guides him to a Wakandan spacecraft, which leads him to the discovery that Yondu lied to him about the fate of Wakanda. Nebula seemingly betrays the Ravagers to repay her debt, but later rescues them, revealing herself and T'Challa were pulling off a triple cross in order for Nebula to get a hold of the Embers. The Ravagers all fight against the Black Order and Tavan, who is defeated and left to the mercy of his slave Karina, and those he kept in his collection. T'Challa forgives Yondu, and they all travel down to Wakanda, where T'Challa is reunited with his family and his people. The setting. The setting of this episode is nothing less than gorgeous. Every setting felt warm and inviting. You wanted to be wherever the characters were. I know I would love to have Drax serve me a drink, non-alcoholic of course, and walking around the Collector's collection with Howard the Duck would be incredible, after freeing all those kept in captivity of course. Just being in that space would be wild. The detail of all of these locations is breathtaking, even more so than the first episode. There were some good locations in that episode, but nothing to the scope of what we see here. I feel that setting this episode in space allows for more freedom of setting, but even Wakanda looks remarkable in animation, and I would live for a Wakandan spin-off in this style. If you're enjoying this video so far, please consider checking out my Patreon, which is linked in the description below. For just £1 a month, or your currency's equivalent of £1, you can receive all my videos a day before they're released publicly. This really helps me and my channel out, since I'm not paid to make these videos, and they do take up a large majority of my time, so any support would be welcome. That is my Patreon, which is linked in the description below. The characters. This episode had an awesome cast of characters, many of whom are drastically different in this universe from those we already know and love. Here is my overview of all the main characters from this episode and what I thought of their role in the story. T'Challa, aka Star-Lord. The main character of this episode was of course T'Challa, as this universe's version of Star-Lord. The way this one character completely changed how the events of Guardians of the Galaxy played out was so drastic that the two are barely even comparable anymore. It's incredible just how much T'Challa put into this universe. The man even managed to talk Thanos out of killing half the universe. T'Challa really is one of the most important characters in the MCU. It's devastating we won't get to see more of him after this season, but at least we will always have this season. Yondu. I didn't like Yondu in Guardians of the Galaxy. I liked him a little more in Volume 2, but I love him in this episode. He really shined here, and it was great to see Mary Poppins back on my screen. He really excelled as a father figure in this episode, and I couldn't get enough of his character. This is an example of refining an already existing character. They took everything that worked and turned it up. I love his relationship with T'Challa. I would love to see him again in the future. Thanos. I gasped when Thanos showed up as a good character. That was something I never expected to happen. But he came across as so warm and caring here, which actually works to make his moment in Infinity War with Gamora just a tad more believable. Thanos proved that he could be a hero if he chose to be, and he could be good, and he could be a good father. It was great seeing his relationship with Nebula evolve in front of us. He isn't perfect, he still caused a lot of harm and still holds on to the idea of genocide being something that could work, which was turned into a running gag, but he has shown growth, and that's great to see. Nebula. In the first episode, I swooned over Bucky Barnes and wanted to be with him. In this episode, I'm swooning over Nebula, but I want to be her. Nebula was a standout character for me in this episode, so much so that she's currently my phone wallpaper. I love her look, I love the way she owns the screen, I ship her with T'Challa, which is something I never thought I would do. I hope in this universe she becomes Queen of Wakanda one day. I think that would be a role she would just fit perfectly. She gave me femme fatale in a film noir vibes, and I really want to cosplay as her. I could devote the rest of the century talking about how much I love her, but we do have other characters to visit, so I'll move on. But Stan Nebula. Korath and the Ravagers. The standout Ravager for me was Korath, the Pursuer, but I wouldn't be doing the others justice by not mentioning them, as well especially Karaglin and Taserface, since they were technically the ones responsible for starting this new branch reality. I love all the Ravagers, dare I say even more than the Guardians team. All they need is Rocket, Groot, Gamora, Drax and Mantis, and they're complete. I would watch an entire show dedicated to the Ravagers team. The Collector and Corinna. Finally, we have our villain Tavin, aka the Collector, who gave a surprisingly good performance as the main antagonist of this episode. He was bad in his original role, but it's clear that left to freely do as he wishes proves he is not to be messed with. In this universe, it's implied he defeated Captain America, Thor, and even Hela. I must say he does really pull off her crown though. It was so satisfying seeing him get what he deserves, and I really love Corinna standing up to him and freeing all those he imprisoned. No individual should be kept in a cage for an eccentric old man's pleasure, or kept in a cage in general. Overall thoughts. Overall, I did enjoy this episode more than the first. I thought the question it asked was more captivating, since I never would have thought of even asking it. The locations and characters are far more visually impressive, and I loved seeing how vastly different a reality can be with just one change, in this case being T'Challa taking the place of Peter Quill. But what did happen to Quill in this universe? Well, to discover that, why don't you join me as we ponder the question, what's next? This episode ends in a rather depressing way. After seeing T'Challa and the Ravagers celebrating their victory in Wakanda, we are taken to a small Dairy Queen where we are reintroduced to Peter Quill as he meets his father for the first time. With no Guardians there to stop him, it appears Ego is ready to end the universe as we know it. With the Guardians of the Multiverse on the way, I think there are a couple of plausible scenarios that may take place. The first is of Ego destroying the universe and displacing some Ravagers, which the Watcher spares, or the Ravagers defeat Ego and some characters go off to join the Guardians of the Multiverse, not feeling satisfied their job is done. I think it's likely we will see Mantis again, since she was at Ego's side in Volume 2, but it would be nice to see Rocket and Groot return, even as a brief cameo to see what they're getting up to. And also Gamora, since we were left with no information on her at all. Whatever happens in this future, I am more than excited because of this episode alone. So that was the second entry in my What If review series. I know this is a few weeks late, but as I mentioned earlier, it really didn't seem fair to start 3 episodes in and ignore the amazing episode that preceded it. The 2 amazing episodes that preceded it. My next entry in the series will be out very soon, and I hope you check it out. Thank you so much for watching this video, and don't forget you can subscribe, like, share, and and comment your thoughts on this video. It really helps me out, everything. My next goal is to get 425 subscribers before the end of August, which is the 400 bit. I have no idea what I'm saying right now, which is in literally a couple of days. So we're really close. So hopefully we get there and reach that goal by then. In the meantime, remember to subscribe, like, definitely share this video with your friends, and I will see you all next time. Bye.